I'm going to talk about my experiences in Second Life working with a couple of classes that we have at the university. And it is a work in progress. I work at St. John's University. That's the one that's in New York City. The main campus is out in Queens, which is a borough of New York. We also have campuses in Manhattan, Staten Island, Long Island, Rome, Italy, and Paris, France. And we're working on others. And I'm a distance education librarian, which is actually a grander title than it sounds. Like many schools that offer distance education, our goal is to make the materials that we have on our campus as available to our distance students as we can. Of course, our e-books and our electronic databases are available to them without any difficulty. But one of the things I noticed was lacking was the ability to reach these distance education with any kind of library instruction classes. Now, the university does not have a Second Life presence. The sign behind me says, "Welcome to the St. John's University Second Life Theater," but I'm using the island of one of our professors, and I will give that. That will be in the chat that I paste in at the end of the session. So if you want to visit, you're welcome to at any time. But he's been involved with Second Life for a couple of years now. He's a business faculty member, and he has his students interviewing or trying to interview people who run businesses in Second Life. He is very convinced that Second Life is one of the waves of the future. I'm not as convinced as he is, but I suspect that Second Life or something like it is going to continue to be here. It just offers too many opportunities for it to fail. So somehow we're going to have these virtual environments. We already have them in one sense if you take a look and use Blackboard or some of those other virtual classrooms that are there. The advantage of Second Life is that you've got people, or avatars, which represent people, but I'm hoping that kind of environment where you can actually see somebody and relate to them has a plus over Blackboard. I've used Blackboard. I think it's valuable. I found it quite useful, but I'm hoping that this is going to be one step forward on that. When I started, I knew very little about Second Life. I came in, I created my avatar, I bumped into walls like every other newbie in Second Life. But I wanted to do something with Dr. Wankel, who was the faculty member I was talking about. And I approached him and I said, I'd like to create some kind of a library experience for your students, for your distance students, and even your on-campus students. And he was willing. He was a believer in Second Life, as I mentioned, and he required his students to come in and get a transcript from me of their session. So I had a built-in audience that was required to attend that I could work with. And before this happened, I had to figure out, okay, how am I going to do this? So I bought the Second Life book on basic building and scripting. I completed my snowman and was delighted even with the off-centered carrot nose. But I persevered, and I actually built a snowman with the nose centered on the face and thought that I had achieved some progress. So knowing how to res a box, I learned how to turn it into a white rectangle, similar to the one you see behind me, on which I could put textures. So I created screenshots of my library instruction lectures, made JPEGs of them, and imported them into Second Life. One texture per rectangle. I hung these on the walls of an existing building on the island he owned. It's called MGT, EMGETEE, an abbreviation for management stretched out, if you will. So I had these presentations on the walls of this building, and students had to walk from one to the other to see it, and I walked along with them to explain the key things that I wanted them to understand. I wasn't happy with that, so I visited a couple of other islands that offered some basic scripting objects and learned how to build, for me, an inadequate slide presenter. I could move the slides forward one at a time, but I couldn't move back. So if I wanted to go back and talk about a previous slide, I had to cycle all the way through, which was time-consuming and certainly annoying to me, and I suspect to the students. So I needed to find something else. I went out and I found a slide presenter I liked, and they offered the same slide thing, one for $50 Linden, the other for $1,500. And not knowing any better, I bought the cheaper one, not recognizing or realizing that I could only copy it once or use it once. Wouldn't allow me to copy it. So if I wanted to create two slideshows, I had to erase the textures on the first one and put in new ones. So I went back and I bought the one for 1,500 Lindens, and it works very well. And let's see if I can, you've all seen it, but I'll bring it out here just to show you the thing that I'm talking about. And I can move it forward and backward. And when I do the presentations in class, I actually have a pointer mechanism over this so that I can point to specific spots on the screen, pointing out highlights, pointing out the specific advantages of using a particular tool. So I'd gone from a single rectangle per texture to an inadequate slide viewer to this. Each time spending a little time learning how to script, learning how to build, and even at this point I consider myself an amateur scripter and an amateur builder. But I found that the people in Second Life have been extremely helpful, and if I've had questions, I've asked them, and they've answered them. And so I make this invitation to anybody here. If any of you have questions about how I did anything, please get in touch with me. As I say, my information will be available to you. And it's available over in my booth, which is over in the extreme left corner to my left. And I'll be there for a little bit after the presentation. And I would be happy to visit any of your sites that offer what little expertise I have. And I can assure you that if you have a complicated scripting question, you're going to be very disappointed in my expertise. So ask simple scripting questions. And even then you're going to be disappointed. But there we go. So I use these presentations as the basis for my talks, but I also leave these presentations available for students so that if they wish, they can come back when I'm not around to review the presentation. So I've got this kind of presentation. But I've also created presentations talking a little bit about basic Second Life movement, moving, flying, and looking around, not simply turning the left and right arrow so that you can turn left and right, but using the control and the alt and the shift features in combination. I find that made Second Life much more enjoyable for me, and I'm assuming it will do so for the students as well. So given all of what I've just told you, what are my teaching experiences and what have they been? Well, first of all, I meet with Dr. Wankel, the business professor I mentioned, and I work up an initial schedule, 5 or 6 sessions that his students then reach me and sign up for, so that I know that people are going to show up. Now, I meet with them individually if that's all that will show up at a particular session. The largest number of people that I've met with, I think, is 12 or 13 at a time, and that has worked very well as well. I try to set my presentation times so that any student in the class will find a convenient time. We have a lot of students that work full-time and go to school full-time, so that their times are very limited. I have given sessions in Second Life as early as 7 a.m. and as late as 1 a.m. or as early as 1 a.m., depending on your perspective.